I remember the night clearly. It was October 13th, 2017, a Friday, of course. The day had been unremarkable, filled with the usual tasks and trivial concerns. But as night fell, an uneasiness crept over me, one I couldn't quite shake. My parents were out of town, and I was home alone for the weekend, something I'd always enjoyed. But that night something felt different. It started around 11:45 p.m. I was sitting on the couch, half watching an old horror movie, when I first noticed it, a faint, rhythmic tapping sound coming from somewhere within the house. At first, I dismissed it as the wind or the house settling. But as the minutes ticked by, the tapping grew louder, more insistent. It seemed to be moving closer. Curiosity and a tinge of fear pushed me to investigate. I paused the movie, silencing the room, and strained my ears. The tapping continued, coming from the direction of the basement door. The basement was a place I rarely ventured, even during the day. It was old, damp, and filled with forgotten relics of our family's past. But that night, the sound was unmistakable. It was coming from down there. Against my better judgment, I grabbed a flashlight and made my way to the basement door. My heart pounded in my chest as I slowly turned the knob, the door creaking open with a groan that seemed to echo through the entire house. The darkness of the basement yawned before me, and the tapping had stopped, replaced by an eerie silence. I hesitated, but the urge to confront whatever was causing the noise was overpowering. I descended the stairs, each step creaking under my weight. The air grew colder as I reached the bottom, and the flashlight's beam barely cut through the thick shadows. The basement was exactly as I remembered: old boxes, discarded furniture, and the overwhelming sense of being watched. I scanned the room, the flashlight flickering slightly. That's when I saw it, something that made my blood run cold. In the far corner of the basement, partially obscured by a stack of boxes, was a figure. At first, I thought it was a trick of the light, but as I stepped closer, I realized it was real. A pale, gaunt figure, standing motionless, facing the wall. My breath caught in my throat. The figure was tall, unnaturally so, with long limbs and a hunched posture. Its skin was ashen, stretched tightly over its bones, and its hair was a tangled mess of black strands. But it was the face, or rather the lack of it, that sent a wave of terror through me. Where the face should have been, there was only a smooth, featureless expanse of flesh. I stood frozen, unable to move or even scream. The figure slowly began to turn, revealing its faceless head fully to me. In the dim light, I could see its chest rising and falling as if it were breathing. Then, without warning, it took a step forward. And another. Its movements were slow, deliberate, as if it were savoring my fear. I stumbled backward, nearly tripping over the cluttered floor. The figure advanced, its head tilting slightly as if observing me despite its lack of eyes. The tapping sound resumed, louder now, and I realized it was coming from the figure itself, its bony fingers tapping against the wall as it moved closer. Panic took over. I turned and bolted up the stairs, not daring to look back. The basement door slammed shut behind me, but the tapping continued, now echoing through the entire house. I ran to my room, locking the door and hiding under the covers like a terrified child. The tapping grew louder, now coming from outside my room, but I didn't dare move. That night, I didn't sleep. The tapping continued until the early hours of the morning when it finally ceased, leaving me in a deafening silence. When daylight broke, I found the courage to leave my room. The house was as it had always been, quiet, empty. But the memory of that faceless figure haunted me for days, weeks, and even now, years later. I never told anyone about that night. But sometimes when I'm alone, I still hear the tapping faint and distant, as if waiting for the right moment to return. And I know, deep down, that whatever it was, it never truly left.